Hi everyone, it's me, Marcy Lamberson, and today we're going to make ladybugs. You know, I've got a thing for ladybugs. They're supposed to be kind of lucky. To me, they're always kind of cute, and I believe they're good for your garden too. You can see on the bottom side, it's flat, so if you wear it, it's very easy to wear, or if you want to put it on something, the flat is just makes life a little easier. It's only two colors, red and black, and I have Effetre light red and Effetre black. And I think what we're going to do is light up the torch and get started. Here we go. Okay, so I have a Nortel miner that I've been using for years and years, and I know a lot of people have a lot bigger torches, and I own bigger torches too. But this miner has just been a real workhorse for me for most of my beads. And this is soft glass. I've got a 3/32 mandrel with dip and go blue sludge. And I think you could see on this bead, it's a little rounder. This was my first ladybug that I tried. And I like the design a lot. But what I want to do is make it not quite as wide, because adding the red added a lot more width to it. I'd like to make it a little bit longer and a little bit slimmer than this, just a touch. So just wanted to show you that, and we'll keep it here so you can see it. But let's get started with the black, and it's Effetre, as I said. So there's going to be a challenge in this. You think, oh, two colors, that's going to be pretty easy. It is and it isn't, partly because when the red glass is hot, it's going to look very much like the black glass when it's hot. So you have to kind of keep an eye on things, and I'll show you the tricks as we progress. So I'm starting with a base bead, and you can tell I'm laying my glass down so that my glass rod is perpendicular to my mandrel. And when you get your glass on to start with kind of straight, it makes the ends much nicer and easier to deal with, and it just makes your life a little bit easier. So I'm just, as you can tell, I'm a lefty, and I start from my right side and I go along. I'm just going to give that a quick little marver, and then we're going to keep going. Sometimes I'll marver even if I don't have to, just because it cools down the glass, and then it's easier to keep going after that. So we've got approximately the length that I'd like to go, my preliminary length. Gave it a little roll on my graphite marver, and we're going to come back up again and start the second layer. And I usually do a first wrap just to make sure that it's right where I want it, and then I start adding on the rest. I have a neutral flame that I'm using, and I use a concentrator. I know some of you have oxygen, the real oxygen, but I have a concentrator, and that works just fine for me. I have a 10 liters per minute LPM. Okay, so I'm on my second pass, second row of black glass, moving from one end to the other. And you know, we all marver different ways or whatever. You don't have to lay down your glass just the same as I do. This is just one of the ways that I do it. But for me, it's the easiest way to work from one end to the next. I can kind of keep track of it a little better. And that just little quick roll every so often kind of keeps things where I want it to go. So one of the things we're going to be doing with this glass is that we are going to be flattening one side of it, and we're going to be rounding up the ends a little bit. So what I want to do is stop the glass, laying down the glass a little bit slimmer than where I want it to end up. And I think I want it still a little bit fatter than this. I'm just taking my brass stump shaper and rolling it a tiny bit. I don't need it perfect. I'm just kind of getting it in shape, and I think I want to make it a little bit wider right down here. So So we started out, as you can see, with kind of like a slim barrel, and I'm going to add a little bit, probably about a third. Oh, oops, that glass just popped off there, so we'll take it right back off again. We'll melt that in. What the heck, huh? Gotta always be able to roll with it. So I just gave it a little marver and in it goes. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit below that because that wasn't where I wanted to add it. I wanted it a third up, not a third from the top. So we're going to add a little wrap and heat that in. I was just reattaching the little blob that I took back off of the glass, and I'm pressing and pulling it around. There we go. Okay, so we added a little more glass to it, and I'm going to melt that in. You can see it's not perfect right now, but I can just marver it and get it where I want it to go. So what I'm doing is, if I've got too much in one area where I added it, I'm just letting it droop a little bit as it's melting in. And then we'll give it a quick little roll and even things up. Now, I tend to use this Cote Marver a lot, and it's because it's got a really nice wide area for me to marver on. So we're just giving it a marver. And what I'm doing is, see how I'm marvering on a little bit of an angle? What it's doing is making the bottom end come in a little bit, and then where the glass comes out, then I'm going to marver it on this half now. And the reason why I like doing it by halves is that way only one half gets hot and moves while the other half is cooler and doesn't move as much. And that way you could move your glass around. See, so I've got a little extra glass here. I'm going to even that up because it's not quite even yet. And I'm going to let it droop and move a little bit that way to help even it up also. There are lots of ways. You can heat it up and marver it. You can heat it up and droop it. You got lots of options. So we're just exercising our options right now. Okay, we're good. So what's going to happen is I'm going to flatten the bottom and see what our shape is, and then I'm probably going to add on a little bit more for a head if it's not quite as long as I want it to be. So I'm heating up my glass and looking to see where all the glass is, and I see that there's a little bit more right here than there is on this side. So what I'm going to do is leave the rounder part up, and I'm going to flatten the side that has a little less. So I just take it while it's hot and press it down. See, so we've got it flat on this side. You can see the flat, and it's got a little chill mark, so I'm going to also take that off. But I'm letting it cool for a second. This is going to be the top side of the bug. So keeping the bead warm, and you see when I pop it into the flame, it gets a little bit of a glow immediately. That means that that bead is warm enough. And I just heated it a little bit to get the chill marks off, but I don't want the chill marks. I want it nice and flat like that. Okay, so I want to be sure that I've got room for a head plus the wings. And I think I want to add just a tiny bit more for the head, and it's going to be a little bit smaller than this. So what we're going to do is just one or two little wraps at the very top. And we're going to make sure that it's warm enough there for the glass to attach well also. So I'm heating up the very end, and I'm heating up a little bit on my rod so that we'll get a good connect. And see the angle where I'm adding it? If I add it going in on an angle, then it makes a really nice connection. So there we go, we connected it. We're going to heat it so it attaches and doesn't have that little dark line. We're going to flatten the bottom so it matches the other. And see how it's a little bit thinner there? That's going to be the top section. of our ladybug. Okay, that glass is nice and connected. So what I'm now going to do is I can either use my brass stump shaper, or I can take a razor blade. A razor works really well. And this part is kind of cool. And I'm just going to heat one area and go across, and that's going to differentiate from the head and where the wings go. So I'm rolling it and heating it up just a little bit, and then I start down right where I want it to go and just make a slight indentation. You see that right there? Can you see that little line? I'm just showing, indicating where the head is. At the very end, we'll add some antenna also. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little pointy tool, and I'm going to hit where the center is, where I want the wings to start. So I'm looking at it, and I'm going to put a mark, a small indentation. Well, I didn't get it quite right. And when you don't get it quite right, what you can do is you can heat it up from below the flame and let the glass run together so you can do it again so you do get it right. Okay, see how the indentation's there? I could just cover it with red, but I figured this is a good time for a teaching moment. See, and now that glass is back together again and even. So I'm going to lay it down and we're going to do it again. There we go. Now it's in the center. That's where I want it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to start laying down the wings. And I'm a lefty, as you can see. So if you want, you can make a thick stringer, but I'm just going to go with the rod, and I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm going to go down on an angle down to where it becomes flat, and that will be one side of the wings. So we're going to keep the bead warm, so I'm going to add a little bit of heat into it. And the way that I can tell that it's still warm is when I touch the bead with the flame, we get the glow immediately. Just got the glow, so I know that it's warm enough. Heating up a little bit of glass, and I'm starting at the top, and I'm making a line down, and I'm heating the glass and heating the glass till it gets to the end. If your wings are a little too small, it's easier to add glass than it is to make it go across too far. Now, as you can tell, when red glass is hot, it looks just like the black. It turns black. So what I do is, while this hot, this glass is still rounded up in a single line. I'm going to heat up about the same amount, and I'm going to go across down on the other side and do the same thing. So now what I have is kind of like an outline for where I want the wings to go. I know that I also want to start up here and go straight down for the wing and do the same on the other side. So I'm starting at the bottom and attaching at the top. So what we now is like have a frame pretty much of where the wings are going to go. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see how narrow or wide I want it. If I add glass this thick, let me heat it up so you can see it a little better. Can you see that glass, how thick it is? If I add it all the way around, will it make the ladybug too round, or will it be about right? And I think it's going to be pretty close if I keep it this thick. If I wanted to thin it out at this point, while I just have the outline, what I would do is heat up the line, and then I would flatten it with a tool, pulling it towards the center and filling in a little bit, and then doing the same on the other side. Still keeping it a tiny bit raised so I can see where the wings are, because the wings look, unfortunately, a little close to what the black color is. Meanwhile, let's give everything just a little bit of heat, and let's start filling this in. And I'm heating up a little bit of glass on my rod, heating up the area where I'm going to add the rest of the wing, and just smushing it down. I'm stopping where it's flat across there. I'm going to do that again one more time. And I just fill in the gap there. I'm very close there, and I'll be able to push the red around to where I need it to go. So I'm heating up below the flame, See how I'm heating up that glass? And I'm just going to take it with my tool and smooth it down. It's almost like a brushing motion, and I'm brushing away from this line to keep this line straight, and I'm just pushing it down. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect, especially because coming from below, you can heat it up and that will even it out if you give it just a little bit of heat at a time, and you can watch it as it smooths out. So this is heat control, and then I can even it up across the bottom just by running my tool across the bottom. We have one wing on. Okay, let's do the other side, but first let's make sure the bead is nice and warm. And then we're going to heat up the glass area, the black glass inside of my red frame, so we know where we're going to be attaching more red glass and that the bead is nice and warm where we're going to be doing it. I'm starting and pushing it down along to the bottom. So here I have a little bit of a gap. Let's just add a tiny bit there. Boop. Oh, I had to boop that one. There was a little bit more. And I can see that this is the next one. And let's see, do I need to add a little bit right there? I'm going to add just a touch in that corner. There we go. That was just a little bit. And again, we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to heat from below the flame. And you can see that glass starting to smooth out. And then I take my brass tool, because brass tools, they move glass, and graphite tools smooth glass. So your graphite tool would work well in this position too, doing the same thing, making the wings. So I'm evening it out, and then I'm making sure that it doesn't pass our flat line across the bottom by running my tool across there. And I can see that I've got my red wings on. If it looks like you've got a divot or something isn't even, just take it and heat it up for a minute, and then just let it rest and let it cool down, and then you can check it again. And that's what I like to do. Okay, so now we have our wings and our head. We're doing really well. So we need to make some dots on the ladybug. And the way that I do that is, we call it pulling emergency stringer, but for me it's really just pulling a little stringer. I've heated up just a little bit because I don't need a lot for dots and antenna. And then I heat up the end of my mandrel. I don't get it super hot, but I get some heat in it. And then I wait a second and I touch my glass down and I slowly and gently pull, because I kind of want thickish stringer. I don't want it super thin. So see what I did? Just pulled a little bit up, and instead of yanking this off of the mandrel where it could break the bead release easily, I just pop it into the flame for a second. And then we go back and might as well heat this up. So I want to have semi-symmetrical dots on it, not exactly, but just kind of in the general vicinity. I want one up here. So if I do one there that's raised, I'm going to do one on the other side in a similar area. And I want one down low. Let's do one down low on both sides. We're going to flatten these afterwards. And then here's another one. And they're similar sizes. They may not be exactly, but that's kind of, I wanted them to show up, and personally I didn't want too many dots on this. So I'm going underneath the flame, and see how just the dots are really showing up? I heat them up one dot at a time and I press down. These are not flat with the red, they're just a tiny bit raised. I'm not sure whether you can see that little bit of raise there. Let's do the other side. We're going to heat up the dots. And the other thing for heating up the dots first is making sure that they're nice and rounded up. Then I gently tap down each one of them while they're warm. They each have a little bit of a glow. And then I see, are they similarly down to the same size as this? Nope, they're going to need another little tap. So again, I'm heating them up a tiny bit. I'm just warming them and pressing them down one more time. Okay, so they're still slightly raised, but not a whole lot. I kind of like them slightly raised instead of flush, but you do what you like best. Remember, it's best to go slow and do it a couple of times, then get it really super hot, and then it kind of mushes all over. A little bit more control that way, and that's part of what we're learning is heat control. So now I want to make two little antenna-like things, and those are going to be dots also, and then we're done. How easy is this bead? Okay, so just heating up a little bit, heating up where I want it to go, and I've got kind of a good sized dot there. I'm touching down to the top, and I'm pressing down and pulling up. So I still have a dot there, but I'm leaving it raised, and I'm heating it all the way around so it's connected well, and I stop and I let it cool down, because after it cools down, that's when I can pull it out with my glass. I just gave it a pull, and then I put a little heat on it. So let's do that again on this side. We're going to heat up some glass, put it down like a dot, and detach the glass. Then we're going to make sure that the dot is very well attached. We're going to let it cool a minute, see how it's changing color, and just before it gets too cool, we're going to pull it out. Now, is this the shape that I want those antennae to be? Do I want them to come out more? Do I want them to go straight up? Do I want them smaller? Do I want a ball on the end of them? We can do all kinds of things. Let's put a little something on the very end. So we have them already a tiny bit pointed, not a lot. Let's put a little ball on the end. So that's another dot, isn't it? And I just go around in a little circle and leave it and let it cool. Keep your bead warm, but just a little warm. See how I'm going into the flame, and I'm making sure that I have a little bit of glow when I go into the flame, and then I stop. Okay, so one of the other good things about working with red like this is red will start turning red when it cools down. So as long as it's dark, you know that it's pretty warm. So we still have this little ball thing to add onto the end. So I got it warm, and I pushed down, and then I'm wrapping it around a little bit to get it to be the size that I want. While it's cooling a little bit, I'm warming up the rest of the bead, and now I'm going from underneath and just heating it up. So here's the deal when you add the little balls to the end of it. First of all, you want to get them kind of even, and this one's a little bit bigger than this one. We'll address it. But you also don't want the little antenna too skinny, because it will make it super fragile that way. And that's not like superfragilistic That's just super fragile, which isn't a good thing. So keep it a little bit thicker than you normally would. This one comes out a little bit more. This one's kind of straight and smaller, so I'm just going to add a tiny little dot and then melt it in, and that should even up the size a little bit more. Oh, they're close enough. If I start fussing with it, that's going to take the rest of the day, and I think that this is plenty. So I am Marcy Lamberson. It was so much fun making a ladybug that's going to turn red and black as soon as it cools a little bit, with 3 dots on each side. It's starting to turn a little bit red. It's hard to see. And thanks for joining me. See you later. Don't forget to check my other videos. I've got a bunch. And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. I'm Marcy Lamberson. Bye.